The Hearing Trumpet by Leonora Carrington, page 54. The office, or study, as it was called on ordinary occasions, was situated on the ground floor of the main building. It was a small room, looking out onto a circular balcony, and further on, the lawn and cypress trees, which skirted the west wing. The room was stuffed to suffocation point with bibelots and heavy furniture, books, magazines, brass Buddhas, and marble Christs, archaeological miscellanea, fountain pens, and all kinds of other small accessories occupied every square inch of space. Dr. Gambit sat behind a huge mahogany desk, which was half as large as the room. He looked professional as he told me to sit down. I found a free space with some difficulty. "For weeks or even years, we do not expect results from the work," said Dr. Gambit. "We do, however, expect effort. This institute was founded with the intention of introducing people to the work. Inner Christianity. We choose our initiates from people already experienced in the sorrows and difficulties of life, in 3 dimensions, people, in fact, already so disappointed with existence that emotional ties would be weakened with time and frustration. This condition is apt to open psychic doors for new truth." He looked at me severely, but I only kept nodding, as I do when I feel nervous. He wrote something in a notebook and then continued. "Every member of this community is closely watched and studied in order that they can receive help. No help can be of any avail if there is not collaboration and effort on the part of the individual. Reports in your particular case show the following list of interior impurities: greed, insincerity, egoism, laziness, and vanity. At the top of the list, greed, signifying a dominating passion. You cannot overcome so many psychic deformities in a short space of time. You are not alone as victim of your degenerate habits. Everyone has faults. Here, we seek to observe those faults, and finally, to dissolve them under the light of objective observation. Consciousness. The fact that you have been chosen to join this community should give you enough stimulation to face your own vices bravely and seek to diminish their hold over you." I was somewhat confounded by this discourse, and I might say offended. After mumbling a bit to get my thoughts in order, I said, "Dr. Gambit, you are in error if you think that anybody chose me as an initiate for your institution. I was sent here merely because my family wished to put me out of their way, without having a murder on their conscience. My daughter-in-law Muriel chose your institution as the only home for senile ladies which was financially within her and my son Galahad's means. It is extremely doubtful that anybody within these walls had ever so much as heard of me. So how can you possibly insinuate that I was chosen by the institution?" "There are certain things that you must neither expect nor try to understand at the present," replied the doctor mysteriously. "Live your daily tasks with attention and effort. Do not try to interpret higher planes and their mysteries before you can extricate yourself from automatic habit. Vice and habit mean the same thing. As long as we are victims of habit, we are slaves to vice. I advise you to begin by giving up cauliflower. I notice you have an inordinate appetite for this vegetable. Your reigning passion, in fact, greed." Mrs. Gambit must have seen me steal a small branch of boiled cauliflower during the morning tasks in the kitchen. I must be more careful, I thought, nodding my head. I am happy and encouraged to see that you are already facing your deficient personality, said Dr. Gambit. Personality is a vampire, and true self can never emerge as long as personality is dominant. I wanted to say, yes, all that is true, but how can you criticize my greed when you are so much fatter than I am? I could only mumble, however, and he seemed to think that I was asking for spiritual advice. Do not be discouraged, he said. Effort is always rewarded when we have renounced recompense. Although greed is deeply rooted in your nature, the fact that you recognize it as a destructive growth will help you to dislodge it, like a dentist extracting a decayed tooth. Surely anyone so fat must be at least as greedy as myself. Or was it glandular? Fat people always say they have glandular trouble, though they always eat more than anyone else, like Muriel, constantly stuffing herself with chocolates and never sharing them with anybody. In any case, all this talk about vicious greed no doubt helped the economy of feeding senile old women. The drawers in that colossal desk of his were no doubt full of preserved fruit, sweet biscuits, jujubes, and caramels. The top drawer was reserved, I supposed, for perishable food such as cheese sandwiches and cold roast chicken, so they wouldn't get forgotten under some account book in a bottom drawer. Glandular indeed, I said aloud. Never heard such nonsense. To my surprise, Dr. Gambit looked pleased and replied immediately, There you have one of the most important practical bases for self-observation. Glands and their function are one of the first proofs of will over matter. Glands yourself, I replied, but I was so cross that my enunciation must have been worse than usual, and he went right on telling me how to observe my glands. Fat little whippersnapper telling me about my glands. I must have dozed off after this, as the room was very warm. I woke suddenly as the door was thrown violently open. In came Natasha Gonzalez, dressed like an apparition. She wore a long white dress, and her abundant iron-gray hair streamed over her shoulders. Her yellow face had 2 purple spots of rage on each cheek, and she pointed at Dr. Gambit like an avenging fury. If you do not get rid of that woman, she shouted, I shall leave the Institute tonight. Pretending to still be asleep, I put the trumpet cautiously to my left ear. Dr. Gambit stood up in some agitation, and sat Mrs. Gonzalez in the nearest chair, on top of a few paperback novels. Be serene, Natasha. Remember your special mission, he said, lighting a cigarette and putting it in her mouth himself. I observed all this out of one eye. I must say, Dr. Gambit had a most unexpected attitude to Natasha Gonzalez. Dear lady, serenity is the tribute you must pay to the wonderful gifts which flow through you. Serenity, Natasha, he repeated, fixing her with the 2 thick lenses of his spectacles. Serenity, Natasha, you are serene, perfectly blissfully calm and serene. Mrs. Gonzalez had relaxed a bit, and was now happily puffing the cigarette. You are serene, Natasha, you are quite calm, and you are relaxing gently. Now, tell me what you were going to say when you came in. It concerns a message from the great beyond, which was bestowed upon me by a tall, bearded man. Her voice now had the quality of a sleep talker. She still gripped the chair spasmodically, however, till the knuckles stood out wide. This towering bearded figure glided into my bedroom and handed me a wreath of white roses, saying, "You are Natasha. Upon this fount of light I build my teaching. To you I give the roses of heaven. Your odor of sanctity is fragrant like blossoms to the Lord. My name is Peter, which is rock."
"Tell me all, Natasha. You are serene and calm, blissfully calm and serene,"
said Dr. Gambit, placing a forefinger on Natasha's forehead. Then the holy man took my hand, and we were gently wafted upwards, and he stroked my hair, saying, "Natasha, those holy roses from the kingdom of heaven are the symbol of your work amongst men and women. You are the pure vessel through which the will of the Master is made manifest to his flock. Rejoice, for you are chosen to lead others. Natasha, blessed amongst women." "Then," continued Natasha, gripping the chair and opening one eye, "he told me there was a message for Georgina Sykes. He said, 'Tell Georgina Sykes that if she goes on spreading vicious gossip about Dr. Gambit and herself, that her ever-decreasing chances of salvation will be petrified forever.'" I saw the doctor twitch nervously.
"What sort of gossip?"
he asked sharply, then, modifying his tone to a hypnotic drawl,
"What sort of gossip, Natasha? You are blissfully calm and serene. What sort of gossip?"
Natasha's voice was anything but blissfully calm and serene, as she replied viciously, "You are going to get a nasty surprise about that backbiting, malignant old trollop. Those saggy, baggy eyes of hers are going to ogle once too often." Dr. Gambit made a slight gesture of impatience.
"What sort of gossip, Natasha? Reply. You are now relaxed and serene. Reply."
"She goes around the whole institution telling people that you're trying to seduce her, and even try to enter her bungalow at night."
"Monstrous!"
exclaimed Dr. Gambit angrily.
"The woman must be mad."
"Georgina Sykes is an obscene old woman," said Natasha with unction. "She is a sex maniac, and ought not to be allowed to mix with the other members of the community. She warps their minds."
"I shall have to talk to her at once,"
said Gambit in extreme agitation.
"This might ruin the reputation of the whole institution."
"That is not all," added Natasha. "She insulted me outrageously. Naturally, I hurried to her bungalow to transmit the message with all the purity of mind I have cultivated for my mission. 'Georgina,' I said gently, 'I have a message for you.' She replied very rudely, saying, 'If it's a message from heaven, stuff it up your something or other.' I was shocked and pained, but I maintained my inner radiance, and I admonished her to listen to what could only be for her own good. Then she pushed me out of the place and slammed the door. Still glowing with secret peace, I went about the day's toil joyfully, till I had the misfortune to meet Georgina half hour ago on the fuchsia walk. She stopped me and hissed like an angry serpent. 'Natasha Gonzalez, you are a lamentable little hypocrite, and if you ever try and relay any more of your beastly messages to me, I shall spit in your face. That is an entire account of the whole affair. It is my duty to open your consciousness to the danger and perfidy of this horrible woman. I will resign from the institution if she stays on." Dr. Gambit seemed to have forgotten about blissful serenity. He was now pacing up and down, wringing his hands, saying,
"This is a terrible occurrence. Georgina Sykes is kept here by her nephew, who pays twice as much as anybody else because she takes extras. Morning Bovril, clean sheets twice a week, massage and Ovaltine at bedtime. It is most distressing. Mrs. Gambit must be spared all this. Her migraine would prevent me sleeping for weeks."
Natasha, who did not seem interested in these reflections, got up to go, saying, "Take my advice and get rid of her. She is a public menace." Finally, I also got up and left. I doubt if the doctor saw me go. He was staring out of the window, looking so distressed that I felt sorry for the poor man. I noticed the doctor always seemed deflated in the presence of Mrs. Gambit, and I now understood that he was actually afraid of her. Possibly she also punished him through the stomach. The person who controls the distribution of food has almost unlimited power in a society such as ours. Mrs. Gambit's despotic rule of the kitchen seemed an unfair advantage. I wondered if it would not be possible to organize a small mutiny. Sunday afternoon was the usual period for receiving visitors. More affectionate relatives would arrive with picnic lunches, which were eaten in different corners of the garden or on the lawn. The rest of us, unfavored by this special attention, would sit near the lunchers and observe them as closely as possible, in order to be able to criticize them later on. Subjects for discussion were always welcome. Also, people received sumptuous gifts such as roast chickens and chocolate cake, merited close observation. Several Sundays went past before Galahad and Muriel came to see me. They arrived towards 5 o'clock in the afternoon, bringing a box of multicolored jujubes and a letter from Carmela. I was most excited to get news of Carmela at last, but I controlled my impatience and kept the fat envelope in my pocket in order to delect it alone and unperturbed. Muriel looked fatter than ever, and Galahad, I thought, looked tired. "I know you will be very happy to hear that Robert is engaged to be married," said Muriel, whose voice was always so unpleasantly loud that I was obliged to listen to her. "We are very pleased because he has chosen a nice English girl, whose family are very comfortably off. They are an old yeoman family from Devonshire. Colonel Blake was here with Flavia, and the two children fell in love at the annual tennis tournament organized by the British Club. We both think it is a most suitable match. Don't we, Galahad?" Galahad said something I did not hear, and Georgina walked close by, giving me a prodigious wink. "Poor old creature," yelled Muriel at Georgina's retreating back. "She looks quite dotty. Someone ought to give her some proper clothes." Georgina turned her head and leered, so I knew she had heard Muriel's remark. I felt ashamed of having such an insensitive daughter-in-law. Besides, pity for Georgina was most displaced, and we all admired her elegant and rather extravagant clothes. "So my own baby Robert is a grown-up man now, and taking a wife," continued Muriel in the same strident voice. "They are to be married in June. Isn't that exciting news?" "Nothing about Robert excites me," I replied. "How are the cats, the red hen, and Rosina and her children?"
Old Mrs. Velasquez took charge of the cats, and Rosina took the red hen back to her pueblo. We had to get rid of Rosina. She became too impertinent. The house was repainted. That was Robert's idea. He wanted to invite his fiancée to a nice, comfortable home. You would hardly recognize the house now. The living room is dark rose, and the kitchen is seascape blue. They sell a new plastic paint which is also washable. Galahad bought some palms to stand in the vestibule, and I repotted them in red lacquered tubs, which I picked up bargain price at the American Episcopal jumble sale.
Carmela had taken the cats, bless her. That was a relief. I felt less happy about the red hen. Hens in pueblos are very thin, if they survive at all. Muriel went on telling me news as loud as she could. During our 15 years' cohabitation, she had not talked to me half as much.
Colonel Blake is staying over to see Robert and Flavia, married. In England, he is a keen sportsman, and will miss the shooting season. However, he is golfing a lot and playing canasta in the evening, so he seems to be having a lot of fun. Robert and Flavia are taking up amateur theatricals with the Footlight Company. They are doing a Noel Coward play, which ought to be a great success. Flavia has the second most important part in the play.
The idea of Robert acting in a play gave me nausea, so I said nothing.
Mrs. Birch, went on Muriel, was so upset that Flavia got the part in the play that she made a public scene. Really, that woman has no shame at her age. Acting? She must be 60 at least.
The sun had started sinking when they left at last. I felt sorry for Galahad, but the day when I could have helped him was long past. Carmela's letter crackled in my pocket, and I hurried off to read it in peace,